We are fucking back. Punters, welcome back to CueBall's Bearded Rambles, the season 4 debut thing. Shit, whatever. We're back anyway. So, I have a special guest for the first episode of season 4. So, I can give him a quick introduction. I'm nice like that, apparently. He's the absolute genius behind the social media page, WrestleBotch, which at this time has a following of 149,000 people. Fantastic, by the way. The page is followed by wrestling legends that we all know and love. Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, Chris Jericho, Randy Orton, Rey Mysterio, and God knows who else, but we all know and we absolutely love them. Plus many more. So, punters, I give you the one, the only, Mr. Ryan O'Connor.
Wow, that was a hell of an introduction. I like the part where you called me a genius.
You are. You are a genius.
I don't know about that, but thank you. Thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here. Happy to chat with you today.
Man, honestly, it's great. It's great I got you on. You know, it's great to just sort of talk to you about behind WrestleBotch and if that made any sense.
The scenes.
Yeah, behind the insanity of WrestleBotch and all that. I will warn you, like I said before we record, press record, I will go on a little bit and I will probably mess my words up, but that's because I'm just a thick as shit, basically. But people love it.
Me too. That's me too.
Oh, like, so we got something in common and cool.
Yeah, I'm a clumsy guy too. Like I trip and fall, you know, embarrass myself all the time. So I feel that almost makes me better for running a WrestleBotch page, is that I kind of get it, you know?
Yeah, totally. So, my first question to you, Ryan, for the dozens and dozens and dozens watching and listening at home or work or in a car or during intercourse or on the toilet, whatever you're doing, how and why did you start watching wrestling? I know you said you haven't wrestled, but what's your first memories of wrestling?
Yeah, I'm clearly most definitely not a wrestler. I first started watching it in the very early 90s. I want to say like 90, 91. I remember I was channel surfing. I've told this story before, so sorry if anyone's listening that's already heard it. But I remember channel surfing, seeing The Undertaker put a job guy or enhancement talent in a body bag. And I was, you know, I'm 35 now. So we're talking like 90, 91, you know, I'm like 6 years old at the time. And I remember thinking, I can't believe they let this monster kill someone on TV and no one's doing anything about it. Like how can they let this go on? So I was kind of hooked from there, you know, on the wacky world of the WWF at the time, and just kind of continued watching. And I would say from there, you know, I watched through the terrible times in the mid 90s of all the bad gimmicks, but again, I was too young to really like realize why some of that stuff was pretty cringeworthy, you know, in hindsight. And then watched, you know, probably my peak fandom was the late 90s, like the Austin and Rock, Mr. McMahon, Attitude Era. It just that was a really fun time for wrestling, in my opinion. So yeah, the early 90s was probably my start. There's also, for some reason, there was a WrestleMania 5 VHS tape that was kicking around our house. I don't remember where it came from, but I watched that pay-per-view so many times, you know, Randy Savage and Hulk Hogan. So that was a special time in wrestling too, obviously, you know, the late 80s there. So yeah, there's definitely been a lot of times where I've fallen off. You know, I'm certainly not the same 10-year-old that watches Monday Night Raw, you know, every Monday, like just in complete anticipation of what's going to happen. But I do try and pay attention to what's going on. There's a ton of, you know, amazing talent out there. I've been checking out AEW here and there. So, but yeah, that's where I go back as far as my wrestling fandom starting out.
Nice, that's cool. No, I mean, if anybody has watched you or listened to you, sorry, about your story, then tough. He's saying it again. So
yeah. Oh, it's true. That's what it is, you know?
Yeah.
Same with like favorite botch. I feel bad answering the same thing over and over. But there's a few that really stick out that are my favorites. But you know, what can you do?
We'll save them till the end because that's a fine question. That is.
Sounds good.
So it was interesting because you said you remember the Undertaker putting wrestlers work as enhancing talent in the body bag. I actually interviewed somebody who was a victim, was one of the Undertaker's victims, and he said he didn't know it was happening. He was just told he was going to go out there, get chokeslammed by Undertaker, and that's that. He took this chokeslam, didn't realize how high he was going to go, and he smacked his head on the floor because he wasn't expecting it. And the body bag, wasn't expecting that either. So he did get a bit scared because he didn't realize he's going to get, unzipped eventually. But yeah. What you said about wrestling back in the early 90s and all that, like you said, that was the best wrestling era of its time, in my opinion, as well. And that's what drew me into wrestling, the Undertaker and Kane feud, especially. Or I think around that time, that's the best storytelling, I would say, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's been said before, but the storylines were just so compelling. And again, maybe we're saying this with the benefit of hindsight, but that's what kept me coming back every week was you want to see what's going to happen next. Like like they were saying about Howard Stern, his listeners, or his haters too, they kept listening because they wanted to know what was going to happen next. And I think that's something that, I mean, it doesn't need to be as insane as it was during the Attitude Era, but there needs to be some compelling storylines that make people want to keep watching. And, they don't, maybe it's arguable whether they do that now, but I find that it seems like nowadays it's more of just, throw two guys together and they'll wrestle, and there's no real reason to get behind any of the guys in some of those matches, at least in my opinion, with exceptions. But yeah, it's the 90s was a special time for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in terms of storytelling, recently I think the best story they had was Randy Orton, The Fiend, Bray Wyatt, and Alexa Bliss. To me, that brought me back to Monday Night Raw. I can't stand Monday Night Raw because it's boring. It's 3 hours long. It's God. That's why I prefer SmackDown. But that was the one storyline that always made me go back to Raw. And now there's a whole Randy Orton and Matt Riddle thing going on. That's pretty cool. I suppose the Arcade Bros. That's going to get me right now. But anyway, let's move on. So, as a child, you're watching wrestling. You had all these colorful icons: Hulk Hogan, Macho Man Randy Savage, Ultimate Warrior, and all that. Who was your favorite wrestlers growing up, and who are your favorite wrestlers now, if you have any?
Bret Hart growing up was definitely high on the list. Shawn Michaels too. And then during that was like maybe more towards the mid 90s, when Bret was kind of running with the belt, and then it kind of went over to Shawn and they were having their feud. In the 90s, can't leave Steve Austin out of that conversation. And looking back, Vince McMahon was such an amazing heel. I would argue maybe the best heel that the WWE has ever had. He was fucking amazing in the late 90s, early 2000s, just off the charts. Current favorite wrestlers, I don't know. There's some indie guys that are fun to watch. There's this guy from Panama that I've talked to a bunch of times, Carcamo. I think he's wrestled in the States a couple of times, but just this kind of outlandish character that will do the fire breathing type shit, and just a super nice dude too. So I'm probably a little biased there, but he's fun to watch. But just in general, the talent level, what you see now, it's pretty incredible. Ricochet, amazing to watch, just an unbelievably talented guy. There's a lot of them. But yeah, Bret Hart was definitely at the top of that list when I first started getting into it. And then Steve Austin as it shifted over to the 90s. So yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I'd say they're good picks. That's my opinion. Your opinion. Anybody else has an issue with it? And it is. So you mentioned Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels. So would you say the Montreal screw job it's a work? Would you say it's like the biggest work in wrestling history, or do you think it was legitimate?
I think it was
I would
legitimate.
say it was a. I don't know, because part of me was thinking, wow, what if it's the work? I mean, how cool would that be if it come out that it was a massive work?
That would be pretty rad. I think it's been too long now that wrestlers, everyone's got a podcast now.
Oh,
So there's
haven't.
no kayfabe. So I feel like if it was a crazy work, that it would have come out years ago. Like someone would have spilled the beans in some way. So yeah, I'm going with not a work on that.
Fair enough. That's cool. So fast forward in time to, I want to say 2018. You decide to set up your page, WrestleBotch. Am I correct?
Yes.
So what gave you the idea of creating this page? One day you thought, I'm going to create a page to do with wrestling, to do with botches. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's so many amazing bad / funny wrestling moments. And, obviously the idea of a blooper reel is not exactly an original thing. Botchamania has been around for a long time. There's a bunch of other like wrestling botch pages. But what I noticed at the time was no one was really doing it on Instagram, which seemed like the perfect platform, especially if you're kind of posting these micro clips. So, we're talking sometimes like an 8-second, 12-second clip. Like that's perfect for people that have short attention spans, probably like myself. So I was like, damn, like someone should really be compiling these bad / funny moments and putting them out on Instagram. So I just kind of ran with that idea, not really having any expectations or not really knowing if, there would be 12 people that end up following the page and no one really gives a shit. And it just started to catch fire. Like it started to take off for some reason. And then, at that point it was like, oh shit, well, I guess I got to keep running with this thing. People are actually paying attention and seem to think it's funny. So yeah, that was it. Started in the middle of 2018. And then actually, I want to say it was almost 3 years to the day. I think it was like right around late April, early May. So yeah, 3 years later, here I am still posting bad wrestling clips.
So that's the case. Happy birthday, WrestleBotch. So did you ever think that you would be reaching out to so many people across this planet? Like I said in the introduction, the page on Instagram has over 149,000 followers. I mean, how crazy is that to you? Just think 3 years ago, just set the page up, and now you're just like, it's.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I think part of it is it's mostly it's not so much like I've interviewed a few guys. I've interviewed Raven, I've interviewed Sid, and I've put together a few compilations or whatever. But for the most part, I'm reposting these wrestling moments, these micro clips again. So I can't really get big headed about having a shitload of followers because these people aren't interested in me. You know what I mean? They're interested in these clips. That being said, did I think that, kind of putting this thing together, I guess it could call myself like a curator. Because, for people that aren't familiar with the page, I don't know. I always say we as if it's like me and a team of people. It's literally only me running the page with a lot of people that send me great clips. But I'm curating them based on these hashtags sometimes. So for example, we're recording this on a Wednesday. So I have a hashtag Wasted Fan Wednesday, where it's not so much botches, but it's usually fans that get overzealous and usually probably had a little bit too much to drink. They jump the barricade. They usually proceed to get their asses handed to them by the wrestlers in the ring. And it's just like a ridiculous moment that is fun to put out there. So I guess my point here is there is some level of like, okay, there's some level of curation where I'm like, okay, I think these ones are, or this clip is one that people will think is funny and here's why. and it fits this hashtag that we created really well. So I'll put this one up. But at the end of the day, even though there is a big following, like no one's really there for me personally. They're there for like the funny wrestling clips. So it's all really cool, especially the big names like the celebrities and the wrestlers that follow the page. But again, they're there for the wrestling. They're not there for me.
Yeah. How cool is it though? You have these notifications from Instagram. One day The Rock has liked your page, has followed your Instagram page. Stone Cold Steve Austin. How cool is that? Because if I had that, I would be pissing my pants.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I definitely mark out whenever that happens. Austin and Rock being two big ones there, where it was just like I'm just now I'll kind of sell myself out here and what a fucking nerd I am. But I remember when Austin followed, I checked his page for like 2 weeks straight where I was like, did he unfollow me yet? Like, he must have made a mistake, or maybe he had some like software that like follows people and then, auto unfollows them. Some celebrity accounts do that to kind of build up their followings.
Right.
But then when he started commenting on the videos and shit, I was like, holy shit, like Steve Austin's in here, like, nerding out about these videos like the rest of us fans. Like it's pretty cool. So yeah, that's really cool to see for sure. It also like makes me it makes it interesting because, for example, Kevin Nash follows the page and like, so someone will send me a really great Kevin Nash botch and I'm like, like, is he gonna be like upset? Like, what do I do here? I don't want to be an asshole, but I think as long as you're not too mean-spirited with it, most of the guys are following the page because they're into it. They don't really care.
Yeah. So, all right. So what is your reaction when somebody posts a negative comment towards a video that you put up?
It depends on the nature of the comment. I mean, since I'm not really in most of the videos, unless I'm interviewing a guy, usually the negativity is about like the wrestling spot that's being highlighted in the video and not so much on me. I guess once in a while there will be the, when it's directly at me, like why is the admin of this page promoting this garbage, blah, 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 blah. Like if it's for example, just the other day, there's this video from a CZW, which is an independent promotion. They had I don't know if they still do it, but in the 2000s, they had a tournament of death. This is death match style wrestling. I don't know how familiar with that your listeners are, but the typical barbed wire, like trash cans, steel chairs, glass, like fire, all these are like really crazy things. So anyway, in this clip, Nick Gage catches on fire after this horrible table spot. He was fine, which is one thing that, I don't want to toot my own horn, but that's one thing I do try and do with some of these clips is if it looks real bad, I'll do at least a little bit of research and be like, okay, is this guy still alive? Is he okay? Like, how long was he in the hospital? Like, when was his next wrestling match? Was it 4 years later or 4 days later? So you can kind of gauge like, okay, he was cool. But anyway, Nick Gage, literally, like he's on fire. And this is a pretty big show. I would estimate there's probably like, between 500 and 1,000 people there. So it's not like an indie show with 15 people. And one of the, I don't know if you would call him an EMT. I don't think he was an EMT, but the guy that should have been getting the fire extinguisher a lot faster than he was getting it. It just took him way too long to put out the flames on Nick Gage. And so there was some comments, why are you promoting this? Like, how could you do this? Occasionally I'm unfollowing the page. This is too much, that type of thing. Yeah. And once in a while, if I'm in a bad mood and I see one of those, I'll feel compelled to, make some smart ass comment back. But most of the time it's just like, you have to say to yourself, for one, like, dude, this is the internet. There's between the Facebook page and the Instagram page, there's over 250,000 people here. Like, and if 99% of that is like positive and, people kind of getting the joke, like, haha, this is fucking ridiculous. Yeah. then cool. You know, why are you wasting any energy whatsoever, even responding like, or letting that type of comment get to you? Like at the end of the day, it is kind of like, it is kind of silly. And
Yeah.
like I say, the page is named WrestleBotch. Like, I don't want it to be just all like, haha, that was a silly, like, you know, Mandy Rose trips on the ramp at WrestleMania. Don't get me wrong, that's a funny clip and I'm going to post it every single fucking time.
Yeah.
But give me some of those backyard clips too. Give me the guy that's had like 30 beers and is trying to do like a Macho Man fucking elbow drop off his roof and completely misses the table.
Oh
Like,
man.
yeah, like that,
Yeah.
like I say, it's like a car accident. It's not good, but I'll be damned if like you're not like staring at it as you're going down the highway. You know, we can't help it. It's like it's like clickbait. You know, we're attracted to these negative things. So
Yeah.
it's like it's weird. It's a weird thing. But that being said, I do try and keep it fun and lighthearted. Not super mean, you know, like I was saying, I think before we hit record, I don't want to be the guy that as soon as someone fucks up a move in the slightest way that I'm just like, ha, 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 yeah, I can't wait to talk about what a terrible human being this person is. That is 100% what it is not supposed to be about. So sorry, that's a long-winded answer to your simple question, but
No,
yeah,
all good.
I try not to let the occasional negative comments get to me. And I'm fucking 35 years old too. Like what am I going to be arguing with dudes like on the internet, like anonymously, like commenting shit? It's just, I'm a busy guy. I think there's better uses of my time than that.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, you could be living in your mother's basement. That's
Yeah,
like an American term.
maybe I am. No.
No, that's cool. You know, don't worry. Every person who comes on here does tend to go off on one, as you, if you will, with their question, with their answer. Sorry, but this is why I call it CueBall's Bearded Rambles, because we end up rambling. And
it's perfect. Yeah, I like to ramble, and it's not every day that I get to talk about this shit. You know, like not all my friends are into wrestling. In fact, I would say the majority of them are not. So when I, you know, talk about, you know, oh my God, look how great this clip is. You know, there's plenty of people surrounding me that are like, I don't get it. Like, why is that funny? Or like,
yeah.
what are you doing? There's like, I don't know if you've ever listened to the Lapsed Fan podcast. Great fucking show. But they always talk about how there's this little bit of shame that you carry as a wrestling fan, especially as you maybe, you know, get into your 30s where, you know, in general, wrestling is not like the big, here in the US, the big four sports. You know, it's not socially acceptable to like wrestling. Maybe it's getting a little bit different over the last couple of years with the, right. You know, A&E is doing these documentaries on Steve Austin, Roddy Piper, Dark Side of the Ring is fucking crushing it for Vice. Yeah. But in general, like pro wrestling, it's, you know, wrestling's kind of a dirty word, you know, amongst the mainstream. So you kind of get that, you know, when you're in an Uber headed to a wrestling event and they're making short conversation with you. Oh, where are you going? Oh, I'm going to wrestling. You know, you'll get like, oh, like Hulk Hogan like type thing.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Yeah. Or like that's still a thing. Like they're still doing that fake fighting. And so, wrestling's a funny thing. I'll always have a special place in my heart. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's the same over here as well. You get your older people like, really, wrestling? That's still a real thing. Yeah, it's like, you know, about 5 minutes down the road, you can go and watch it most months. Well, before the pandemic happened, but it's just crazy how something that was once so big has just become something really small, if you will. You know, no matter how much it's on social media, on the TV, it still seems quite a small community in such a big world. It's really weird. So obviously you mentioned that you've done interviews with Raven and Psycho Sid. So how did they come about, and which one did you prefer interviewing, or was they both just as good as one another?
They were both really, really cool. Raven was he's a funny dude, so he was really easy to talk to. Sid was great as well. More intimidating, I think, because obviously he's a monster of a man. It's what, like 6'7", 6'8" or something, just a giant dude. And he's had some pretty notorious wrestling moments, some really funny botches, some really funny moments on the mic where he's slipped up. So, you know, going into it, I was a little bit like, I hope he doesn't, like, I don't know, like give me 2-word answers and kind of put me on the spot. But he was a fucking gentleman. He was great. I talked to a lot of indie guys as well who are always, I don't think I've ever had a bad conversation with any of the indie wrestlers that I talk to, which is cool because, you know, the basis of most of those conversations with indie guys is usually around a either embarrassing or horrific spot that they've endured in the wrestling ring. So it's not, especially if it's embarrassing, or, you know, I guess if they got hurt too, it's not exactly like a fun topic to cover, like as the basis of our conversation. And they were all really cool, like happy to talk to me about it once they, you know, saw that I wasn't coming from a super negative place. But I think when we look at some of these micro clips, at least myself, like, again, going back to me just being maybe like a curious nerd, like I want to know more. When I see an indie guy like Marcus Everett doing that elbow drop off, like what he climbed like almost 3 stories before landing on concrete, completely whiffs, you know, misses the table.
Yeah.
I want to know what was going through his head. Like, did he think he was going to die? Why did he do it in the first place? Did he realize like how viral it was going to go? Like it's, those always make for really interesting conversations. And I think a lot of those guys are, at the end of the day, probably misunderstood, you know, just get caught up in the moment, trying to make a name for themselves, get way too carried away. And most of them are really good dudes. But yeah, I've always, I wish I had more time. Like, I run a record label and I have a design agency. So I wish I had more time to do the interviews because there's so many fucking guys that I would love to talk to about like notorious spots, but it just hasn't really been in the cards over the last 6 months to a year. But in the future, I'm hoping to, you know, maybe have a few more conversations like that.
Well, hopefully you can do it, you know, because like you said, it's good to know what goes through their head. I mean, like you said, I don't even know how that guy didn't die. How did he not break his elbow or anything? It's crazy. I watch it and oh God. I mean, I had, you know, when because I wrestled as well, when I first started wrestling, you know, it's your first match, you're going out there trying to impress like your nan and all that, whatever. And then your mind goes blank. The spot was to climb up to the turnbuckle and crossbody out into the crowd, onto the wrestlers I was against. And I got up to the top, realized how high these posts were to the ground, and I just jumped. I just jumped and it's landed on my feet. My knee. You know, it's silly things like that. You think, oh, I'm really going to do this, going to impress people. And like, oh, yeah, I forgot what I'm doing. It's things like that.
It happens. It happens. And I mean, all the, I think one of the reasons that a lot of the big names in wrestling have followed the page is because they've all had bad botches too. So at the end of the day, maybe it's better to laugh at some of this shit than to dwell on it.
Yeah, of course, definitely. I mean, you know, when everybody would have gone through these botches, everybody would have gone through all the accidents as they're coming up through wrestling, through anything really. Accidents happen, and this just makes us who we are, I suppose.
Yeah, you know, and it's a dangerous fucking sport too. Like, and I know some people, oh, it's not a sport, whatever you want to fucking use, but that's one reason why I wouldn't say I like to post the like crazy clips where someone gets hurt. But I think it's good to showcase that because, as you know, as a former wrestler, like one thing goes wrong in that ring, you can get seriously fucked up. So it's maybe not a bad thing to remind people that wrestling isn't all fun and games. Like some people get really, really hurt.
Yeah, I do still wrestle. It was, you know, it was just a minor knee injury at the time, but you know, thankfully it's all gone now. This is, oh God, 2009. This was, like I said, wasn't anything too bad, but yeah, it brings the realism into wrestling, and I like how on your page you don't shit on these people for botching.
Yeah,
there's like a
most
positive.
of the time not.
Yeah. Well, you try not to anyway, I suppose. There is like a positive to it, which is nice. It's not a case of it's fucked up, whatever. It's you put like a funny capture and then try and make light of the situation. So I think it's good. I think, and many others think it's good what you do. So yeah, so thank you for that. Making us laugh.
Thank you. Yeah, it's nice to see that. Again, I don't want people to think I'm just the basement dwelling troll.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on modern day wrestling as a whole?
The talent level is off the charts. Like we talked about Ricochet earlier, you watch a guy like that and it's like, holy shit, what a technician, guy's just insanely talented. So I would say the talent level is really, really high. Again, going back to what we were talking about earlier, I wish there was more storylines, sucking us in, getting us to care more. And one thing I think may hurt modern day wrestling is the oversaturation. Like, how many pay-per-views does WWE have? Like fucking at least one a month, right? Like there's over 12. And I feel like a grandpa, when I talk about some of this shit, like, back in my day, we only had 4 pay-per-views. However, I feel like when they had the big 4, you've got the Royal Rumble, you've got Mania, of course, you've got SummerSlam in the summer, you've got the Survivor Series. Obviously I grew up a big WWF guy.
Yeah.
You could build to those 4 cornerstone pay-per-views. Like, you had months and months to build up storylines to get people to give a shit. And like, people have known that it's quote unquote fake for a really long time. So I know the cat's out of the bag and kayfabe is dead, but that was the case in the late 90s as well. And they still managed to get people to give a shit. They still managed to get those huge ratings. And it was because people wanted to see what was going to happen next. They wanted to see, like, what is Austin going to do to Mr. McMahon? What is Mr. McMahon going to do? Like, and there was, granted, we were younger at the time, but there was also, even though it's a work, it's fake, there was this little piece of you that's like, okay, I know this, again, quote unquote, is fake, but that guy, like Steve Austin, he really doesn't like working there, and he's really like got it out for Vince. Like, so there's some, like, you almost would maybe convince yourself of some of these things, even if they weren't true.
Yeah.
But maybe they would base it on a little bit of realism too, letting people's characters kind of shine through, be like an exaggerated version. I think I've heard Jim Ross say that before.
Yeah.
Some of the best characters are exaggerated versions of their own personality. So that being said, I think maybe not so much in AEW. I think it seems like they have more freedom to kind of run wild with their ideas, for better or worse. But I've enjoyed watching AEW, like seeing what they're doing. They're clearly still finding their footing, and it's still new. I think it will get better as time goes on. So I guess that would be like my main critique of modern wrestling. And I don't think it's so much on the talent as it is, WWE is a publicly traded company. Vince seems like a pretty crazy guy. He's got shareholders to answer to. Vince won't even say wrestling. He looks at it as a entertainment. They're an entertainment company. But at the end of the day, they're the ones selling their network to Peacock for however, what was it, like a fucking $1 billion? Like,
something like that, yeah.
And maybe not that. It's like some absurd amount of money. So, he probably knows more about the business than all of us do. So who are we to say? But I mean, from a fan perspective, I don't have that excitement that I had that made me need to tune in, because it's kind of like, oh, they're still doing this storyline that like no one gives a shit about, or they're throwing these 2 guys together with no storyline. So yeah, like, I guess that's kind of my jaded old guy answer to modern wrestling. And I want to love it too. You want to love it. And I respect it, I respect the talent. I wish they would do more for the fans, to get us invested in it.
Totally agree. That's a good answer.
Yeah.
So my last question to you, Ryan, is a bit of out of the box one. So If you had creative control over a WrestleMania main event match, who would participate and under what match or under what rules would you put them in?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Just so
You know,
you want a spot kind of thing,
yeah, the old jaded guy in me, it's funny. I just sit here and talk about like, they need to build these storylines, and it's probably difficult to build storylines around part-time talent, or guys that they only bring back for one-off appearances. But I mean, I would be lying if I said like if they managed to book like a Rock Austin like rematch, I'm watching that pay-per-view,
Yeah.
and I think a lot of other people would too. So maybe give us some crazy main event like that, and then put two younger guys like for the co-main event or like under it. So I don't know. I think finding it's not like a specific answer, but I would look to maybe bridge that gap between getting some of the quote unquote old timers, that are still capable, that
Yeah.
are not all fucking broken down. Bring in those guys for, one-offs or special occasions to get them to care about some of the younger guys, instead of just going out and like kind of burying some of the younger guys, or
Yeah.
um, and now to put my foot in my mouth, or to talk out of both sides of my mouth. I was at Mania a couple of years ago at MetLife, whatever one that was, 2 or 3 years ago. And I went to the Raw the following Monday as well. Shout out to Scott Ratner from OBB Productions, who I actually met through my Instagram page, who is this Hollywood director that's like our age, a wrestling fan.
Nice.
So Scott hooked up tickets for the weekend. So, we're sitting in these fucking amazing seats for all these shows. My point here is not to humble brag about the cool tickets that we got, was when The Undertaker came out at Raw, I felt the hair on my arm stand up. Like I literally got goosebumps when he came out, and he literally came out, like destroyed Elias, like who just gave a promo, and then left. So that's like almost the type of thing on Twitter that you would see people like losing their minds about. Like, how could they bury Elias like that? Blah, blah, blah. As a fan who was in there, I was all about it. It's just like, let The Undertaker do whatever he wants. Like, I don't care. Like, fucking wheel him to the ring in a wheelchair if you have to. Like, just get that music to hit with the lights going out. I sound like a fucking nostalgia freak.
No, it's all good, man, honestly.
Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe just like a better mix of like bringing back the old guys, and not just fucking Goldberg. I feel like Goldberg has headlined like every I don't know, every pay-per-view for the last like few years was like, oh my gosh, like Goldberg is coming back. And that's cool maybe once or twice, but I feel like it's I don't know, just they need to be more creative. And I know that's easier said than done. There's a lot more that goes into it than what, the quote unquote internet fans know. But I don't know. It's tough to watch sometimes.
I mean, looking back at Goldberg, when they brought him back to go and beat Lesnar,
yeah,
it was neat. That was when it was needed. That was like, oh, Goldberg, that added some excitement. But when they put him against Drew McIntyre, you could see Goldberg he just isn't Goldberg anymore, kind of thing. To me, it kind of ruined Goldberg. Everybody knows Goldberg as this like big badass, gonna try and jackknife you. But now it's just like, nah, after that WrestleMania match or Rumble match, whatever it was, sorry, that was it for me.
Yeah, there was the one he had with was it The Undertaker? I can't remember.
Yeah, I think I know where you're gonna go with that.
Yeah, was that the match? I'm drawing a blank on there he had a brutal fucking or was it? I can't remember who it was. It was like 2 or 3 years ago, maybe like the greatest Royal Rumble or something like that. I think it was a Saudi show, a Saudi Arabia event that WWE booked. Goldberg. Yeah, I believe it was Goldberg and Undertaker.
Yeah.
It's so memorable. I can't even remember who was in the match. But Goldberg just looked like a shell of himself. And I mean, the poor guy is what, like fucking 50 years old or 55, whatever he is. But yeah, just brutal, getting beat around, knocking his head into the post. Just,
Yeah.
yeah, just brutal to watch. So yeah, it can be difficult to watch at times for sure.
Yeah. There's always a time and place to bring back the old guys. And
yeah.
So that is my questions out of the way, Ryan. I have two fan questions for you. I asked fans to ask my guest questions, and you got two of them, like I said. So somebody called Kieran Green, a friend of mine, he is asking you, what is the funniest botch you have ever seen?
It's a tough question. There's literally thousands of like amazingly bad botches. There's this one I don't answer with all the time, but I think it's one of the best. It's from Saturday night's main event, 1989. I believe Akeem and Bossman, I think they're tagging against the Mega Powers. So we've got, you're shaking.
I know what you're going.
Which one I'm going for. I mean, it's been, gone viral on Twitter probably 20 times. It always gets a great reaction when I post it. But Akeem going against the ropes, trying to time it, I believe at the same time as Boss Man, completely missed times. Akeem, yeah, like what did I say, ass over tea kettle, just like completely fucking goes over or through the ropes, like onto his ass. It looks like a cartoon, his feet up in the air as he goes out of the ring. Yeah, that was from February 1989. So that's got to be up there with one of my favorites for sure. You've got to mention the Shockmaster in this conversation as well. The debut of the Shockmaster is one of the most notorious wrestling botches of all time. So that's up there as well.
Yeah, definitely. That just goes to show how you should rope run. If you don't know how to run the ropes, that's going to happen. Obviously, it was a botch. It was an accident completely by mistake. But that's a good example where you should know how to run the ropes. Otherwise, you're going to go through on the again, what's it called? Yeah, on the floor. Next question is by somebody called Blanchard _BXB. Your favorite botch ever?
I have to say Tom Zink versus Brian Lee, Clash of the Champions 13. I think it was 1991, somewhere in there, early 90s. Zink goes for a crossbody off the top ropes or second rope maybe. Completely whiffs. Brian Lee's like nowhere to be found. I think Brian Lee maybe missed the spot more so. But there's just something about him going for that crossbody, like completely spread out and just absolutely nobody home. Yeah. And then the cherry on top of that clip is Jim Ross on commentary, who Jim Ross is like one of the best of all time, like if not the best of all time. Yeah. So I love when he tries to cover it on commentary, and he's usually pretty quick. He'll have some excuse like fucking ready to go to kind of make sense of it, which is funny in hindsight. In our 30s, when we look back at some of this when we were kids, it's like, damn, like Ross is like great job at pulling the wool over our eyes. Yeah. Jim Ross for that spot was just like, I can't remember exactly what he says, but something like, he missed, he comes close, but he didn't quite get him or something, or Brian Lee moves out of the way when he like wasn't even fucking close. So every time I revisit that clip, like I can't help but smile or laugh. So that one's got to be my favorite.
It's like perfect form, perfect form for the crossbody. Everything was there, but he wasn't there. So that's it. That's the questions. That's my questions out of the way. That's the fan questions out of the way. Ryan, is there anything you'd like to shout out, promote, anything before we go?
No, not really, man. If anyone is not familiar with the page, they can follow on Instagram or Facebook. It's at WrestleBotch, one word. There was a Twitter account as well. Currently suspended. The copyright gods have struck my Twitter account. That's been down for months now, maybe even 6 months. I don't know if that will ever be resurrected. I've tried a couple of avenues to get that back up, but no dice so far. So yeah, just having fun with it while it lasts. You know, it could go down due to copyright issues at really any moment. But yeah, you can check it out on Facebook or Twitter, or not Twitter because it's suspended, but Facebook or Instagram, and hopefully it will be going for at least a little bit longer to come. But I want to say we've hit 3 years now. So yeah, we'll hopefully another 3 years on Instagram and Facebook.
Let's keep everybody laughing. I'd imagine you would have helped loads of people throughout the lockdown, throughout the coronavirus when we couldn't go out. You've helped me have a laugh, and I know you've helped a lot of people as well.
Dude, so, that means a lot. Thank you for that, seriously, because I know we talked about this.
Thank you for making us laugh, honestly, man.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I'll hopefully keep doing it for years to come, but I enjoyed the chat, so thanks for having me.
Coming on, man. So, with that being said, this has been the man behind WrestleBotch, Mr. Ryan O'Connor. I have been a returning, beer drinking, heavy metal listening, bald-headed brawler, CueBall. I botched, whoops. And stay safe, stay positive, catch you in the next one. #, yeah.